So Keith Olbermann had a pretty giant meltdown and tantrum on Twitter recently. This was specifically over the Supreme Court's decision to allow Trump on the ballot in Colorado, which means by extension that he's going to be allowed on the ballot everywhere. This really isn't just a decision for Colorado. It's for all the states that kicked him off. And I believe we were up to 4 states that had said Trump is not allowed on the ballot because he violated Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. So let me walk you through this here. This is kind of funny. Title here, Mediaite. Keith Olbermann calls for SCOTUS to be dissolved. Based? Not based? I'll leave it up to you guys. We won't get too deep into that now. That could be a video all on its own, whether or not the Supreme Court should be dissolved. In tantrum over Trump's victory in ballot case. Those aren't tears, fascist. They're urine. What? All right, I'm a little confused about that one. All right, let's dive into it. Former ESPN and MSNBC personality Keith Olbermann did not take the U.S. Supreme Court's unanimous decision to put Donald Trump back on the ballot in stride. On Monday, in a per curiam decision, the court ruled that the Colorado Supreme Court erred in disqualifying Trump from the state's presidential contest because the states aren't empowered to enforce the insurrectionist clause in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. On X, formerly Twitter, Olbermann reacted with fury, laying into all the justices, including Democratic appointees Ketanji Brown Jackson, Elena Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor. Here, I'll read his tweet for you. I'll do it in his voice. The Supreme Court has betrayed democracy. Its members, including Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor, have proved themselves inept at reading comprehension. And collectively, the court has shown itself to be corrupt and illegitimate. It must be dissolved. That sounded like a mix between Keith Olbermann and a professional wrestler in 1993. That's what that voice sounded like. All right, I'll give you some more. The Supreme Court is full of shit, Olbermann insisted in another post, but that was merely a prelude to his masterpiece, which came in response to a reply from a right-wing influencer who urged him to, quote, cry more, and then pointed out that the decision to reinstate Trump was unanimous. Okay, so this right-wing guy named Gunther Eagleman, come on, man, that almost sounds like an AI-generated fake-ass account. It could be a bot, I don't know. Cry more, 9-0. Olbermann responds, those aren't tears, fascist. They're urine. I'm sure you enjoy being bathed in it. What? Oh, man, what a swing and a miss. Holy shit. Those aren't tears, fascist. They're urine. I'm sure you enjoy being bathed in it. Okay, so I get that he's saying, I'm not crying, and you're a fascist. And then when he says they're urine, I'm sure you enjoy being bathed in it. But that would imply urine's on your face. Because if it's tears, it would be on your face. So the urine would be on your face. So there's urine on your face, but you're saying he enjoys being pissed on? There was some debate in the replies over what exactly Olbermann was implying. Oh, I remember this from Happy Gilmore. When the guy's like, I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast. And Happy Gilmore says, you eat pieces of shit for breakfast? And he's like, no. That is what it's like. Keith, this comeback doesn't make any sense. It implies you're pissing on yourself. But Olbermann ignored the noise and just pressed on, decrying the influence of that motherfucker Scalia, a reference to the late Justice Antonin Scalia. Look, this is one of those instances where even if the heart of what you're saying, even if the general sentiment of what you're saying is true, if you're too unhinged and too cringe, you come out looking like the loser, bro. And that's what happened here. Because he's actually, on the substance of the case, to say nothing about, he said dissolve the Supreme Court. Put that aside. That's another debate for another day. Putting that aside, on the substance of this case, I actually agree with him. I think it is kind of an absurd decision. But he was so unhinged. It was such a tantrum and a meltdown. And it was such a horrific comeback to that dude. Man, you are right for looking like the loser in this scenario. Oh, that did not work well. By the way, this is the thing about Keith Olbermann, right? There's been 1,000 stories. This guy's worked ESPN, MSNBC, Current TV, the old left-wing network that Cenk Uygur was at. And word is from everybody who's ever worked with him, oh, this dude is absolutely batshit crazy. However unhinged he looks on social media, inject that with steroids and human growth hormone, and that's what he's like in real life. totally impossible to work with, incredibly demanding, yells at everybody around him and people who, he of course is supposed to be kind to and nice to his own workers. Totally unhinged. And you know what? It comes across really, really clearly. And now it's even spilled over into, I feel like his public persona, he was able to kind of mask it for a while. Now ain't no masking it. Ain't no masking it. Remember, what was he doing? He was doing these videos for like GQ, and they were the cringiest things I've ever seen in my life. And it was during the Trump era, and he somehow found a way to make like the anti-Trump perspective look totally deranged, even though it's not. So at this point, he's not helping, right? He had his moment. Keith Olbermann had his moment. During the Iraq War, kind of early on in the Iraq War, he was the first voice to come out on MSNBC and say, this is an illegal war. This is an offensive war. George W. Bush is a war criminal. Dick Cheney is a war criminal. We're doing torture. We attacked literally the wrong country. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11 or Al-Qaeda or Osama bin Laden at all. And so he was kind of a hero to many people on the left. But as time has gone by, whoo boy, has he gone, he's lost it. I mean, you almost wonder, like, are you on something, Keith? Are you on something? That's the first question. And then if the answer is no, should you be on something? Should we hit homie off with Lexapro prescription or Prozac or whatever the hell, because he certainly acts like he needs it. All right, now final point, and I can't get through the segment without bringing this up. Even though he's cringe, even though he's unhinged, even though it's an epic tantrum, even though it's a fit and a meltdown, he's right on the substance of this case, okay? So here, 14th Amendment, Section 3. This is what Trump violated. Let's read it. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector or president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So, what they said is, this is what the Supreme Court said. They didn't answer one way or the other if it was an insurrection or if it wasn't. They just totally dodged that completely. And what they said is, this is the wrong decision because the burden would actually be on Congress to say that Trump can't run because he violated the insurrection clause. That's what they said. Now, I just read this amendment to you. Pause it and read it again if you don't understand what I'm about to say, because what I'm about to say is inarguable. They just made that up. They made it up, that Congress has to be the one to say, you can't do it. What it actually says in the amendment, the last line is, but Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So in other words, what could theoretically happen is, you have the state of Colorado, the state of Maine, the state of Illinois, some others, said Trump can't run. He did an insurrection. If Congress wants to come up with a piece of legislation in response to what those states did, and they say, we're overriding that, he is allowed on the ballot, that would be allowed. But you'd need a vote of 2/3. You can't do it with a simple majority. That's what the amendment says. The amendment doesn't say the original decision to get him off the ballot has to come from Congress. That is utterly made up. Totally made up. Shameless. And by the way, the original decision in some of these cases, the judges were very clear to lay out, if you believe in textualism, if you believe in originalism, in other words, the plain face reading of the Constitution and what the founders meant is how we should interpret it. If you believe that, you have to side with the people who are kicking him off the ballot. You have to do it. So what they did is a Weasley dodge. That's what it was. What they should have done is wade in and conclusively and definitively answer whether or not it was an insurrection, or not just an insurrection, or that Trump was giving, quote, aid or comfort to the enemies who were doing the insurrection. They should have weighed in on that. And they should have let it stand because, again, they made up what's in this amendment. So, from a legal perspective, I think they got it dead wrong. And there's some other people who say, well, he wasn't convicted for insurrection, so how does this apply? Read the amendment. It doesn't say anything about how he has to have a conviction of doing an insurrection. So they made it up, and they made it up because they didn't want to, leave their mark on history as aggressively as to side with some states kicking somebody off of a ballot. And it's a chicken shit decision. It's not based on the plain face reading of the law. And it's kind of an embarrassment. And it's a shame that the person who's the biggest cheerleader against the Supreme Court on this is Keith Olbermann, because he does not make my side look good. He looks unhinged and silly, and he's talking about urine on people's faces. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.